The research team of Laurie Cutting, Stephanie Del Tufo, and Tin Nguyen from Vanderbilt University seek to understand what combination of brain structure and home learning environment create resiliency in children raised in adversity and poverty. Please welcome Tin Nguyen.
All right, of course, being the first person is a lot of anxiety. So thank you for not laughing yet again. So, well, just to start, I thank you everyone for being here with me and the opportunity to, for me to share this exciting project on resiliency with, give me a second. So this project has been cooking up in our lab by the team of Drs. Laurie Cutting, Stephanie Del Tufo, myself, and other members of the Education and Brain Research Lab at Vanderbilt University. So we want to take the simple questions and kind of ask it with a more complex debate as to how poverty can negatively impact the brain of children and their educations, but how through resiliency, through the brain, that these children from poverty can still thrive and achieve in their educations. And before starting with these ambitions, I think that we should start walking through the actual inspirations and motivation that hide behind the current of this project. And of course, it started in San Antonio, Texas, right here in town. And on one evening, on a Friday afternoon, when I was interning at the Mindsign Foundations, I was talking to Miriam Good, and we both were talking about these. Major figures in the education reforms world, such as Ken Robinson and Alfie Kohn, and their attempt to bring to the community the attention that poverty negatively influenced children's classroom performance is sad. Miriam and I were frustrated. So, but you know what? This really sparked a motivation in me to make a change. And I kid you not, the Monday after that, I started volunteering with the San Antonio Youth Literacy as a reading tutor. And my first assignment was at Bonham Academy. And most of you local know that it's a Title I school to support children from poverty. And my first assignment was with two boys from the second grades. And you know, little did they know, these was the inspirations for me to be here on the stage. So a little bit about these boys was that they were from low-income households. They were reading at kindergarten level, despite the fact that they were in second grades. Their parents was having multiple jobs to support their family, so there was not a lot of room for educational support at home. But you know what, as simple as for me to spend some classroom hours with them, just to read with them, for them to read to me, this really, motivated them to read more, kind of sparked some excitement in them to read more and, develop a more natural curiosity just to learn overall. And after a whole academic year, they read above their peers, way beyond their grade. So this was incredible. I was happy that my broken English at the time was of 6 years was able to help someone, but these two boys were the only two of the 70% of the students in Texas that performed below the national standards for reading and language. And we know these are the crucial skills for them to be active members of the society. But secondly, I want to ask, how can we effectively support the children from poverty? Is there something more we can do than just reading it to them? And children from poverty typically have less access to healthcare, nutrition, material resources, and of course, educational resources at home. But we know that, and as you recall that from my and Miriam's frustration from earlier, is that these factors of poverty bleed themselves into children's performance in the classroom, where children from poverty perform poorer as compared to their peers from more well-off backgrounds. But you know what? This is not the case for everyone from poverty. Some children from poverty manage to thrive and excel in the classroom. And you can already guess this, these children are thought to be resilient. So now we have the hook. We know that we can potentially do more, and we can ask the questions of what and how we can do to further promote resilience in these children. So while this is very ambitious, we have two specific goals in mind. For our first goal, we ask, what is the difference between children from poverty that have resilience versus not? Does the biological basis of consciousness, such as the brain, would be able to, give rise to resilience and protect children from poverty? And for our second goal, we want to shift our attention back to what I did at San Antonio Youth Literacy. Just a very simple act of reading and something that you as parents and your children read for bedtime story. Whether the stimulating home environment could further interact with the brain and together could, underscore resilience further to protect children from poverty. So to answer these questions, why start with the brain? So we all here know that human consciousness, especially even early during childhood, that is the product of, that it absorbs all these surrounding experiences, even those from poverty. And indeed, using brain imaging, a lot of studies have shown that children from poverty tend to have much thinner and less expanding grammatic cortex, especially in the left prefrontal cortex, or the left PFC as shown in red. And most of you know that this is the center of executive functions, working memory, and planning goal-directed activities that help children go through from day to day as a functioning society member. And you know what? Our lab has also shown that the left PFC might be the seed to resiliency in education performance amongst these children. So now we ask whether the left PFC could potentially be also boost the resilience in children from poverty. Because now we know that the brain could potentially control resiliency, so what else can we do with it? So moving on to the second goal, we want to shift our attention back to what is of particular importance to resilience within the context of home, such as the cognitively stimulating the language home, just like the engagement between the parents and the child, reading activities at home before the bedtime. Or you can think of this as like the language nutrition that help parents to nourish their child's brain and cognitive development. And guess what? Our team has also shown that beyond the impact of poverty, that reading together with the children can potentially boost the growth of brain regions that support language and literacy skills in reading, such as the left superior temporal cortex or the left STC as shown in red, shown in green right here. So now we know that. We know the first goal about the left prefrontal cortex. The next question we ask is whether this factor of the home environment could further interact with the brain, and together if the left STC and the left PFC could interact together to work together and further promote resilience in these children from poverty. So to boil down everything, we did perform our study in 340 children, follow them starting from first grade to fourth grade, take pictures of their brain, and ask parents about the activities that they engage, such as reading and literacy, likewise at the home environment. And for our first goal, like I mentioned earlier, that we want to look at the brain, like what of these biological bases of consciousness differentiate between children who are from poverty, who have versus do not have resilience, and compare those children from more well-off background and see if this part of the brain is more unique to children from poverty. And for our next goal, we asked whether these literacy reading activities that engage between the parents and the child, what you do at bedtime with your children, can further interact with the brain to underscore resilience together. So that is to wrap up my presentations. And here we're trying to argue that human consciousness, and especially during childhood, that is highly buffered, is that not only that poverty can negatively impact the brain, but through resiliency, that childhood consciousness can allow it to blend itself with parental care and warmth to further support them to thrive and succeed in school. And thank you. And we can do this without all the engineers, scientists, teachers, educators that are part of our lab, at the Education and Brain Research Lab at Vanderbilt. And there's my email if you have questions. And to that, I thank everyone.